Hello, in this video, we are going to sadly conclude the Terminal Deep Dive series. But the bright news is we gotta learn a bunch of commands as well as a bunch of advanced techniques that we can do in the terminal. Well, without further ado, let's get to it. So picking up where we left off, we learned how to create a bunch of directories as well as to navigate around the directories and to make files. If you don't know how to do that, I would recommend you watch part 2 of the series. And that is where we'll start off for today, is we'll be creating a bunch of files as well as folders inside of the terminal folder that we created last time. So, if you're not already there, let's say that you're in the new session of the terminal. So I'm just going to close this. And what I mean by session is every time that you open a new window of the terminal, it actually doesn't save anything you did in the last session. So every time you open a new window, it's a new session. As long as you are staying inside of this window, it will continue on into the session. So right after the cursor, I am going to see where I am first. The command for that is pwd. That will print out our current directory. And we can see here we're in the root directory of users and then whatever the user that you're using it. Another way that you can see who is logged in is that you can type in who am I, and it will print out the current user that's logged in and using this machine. So now that we can see that what directory we're working with, let's see what's in the directory with the ls command. And we can see all of the system directories, and the one that we are going to is the desktop, because that is where our terminal folder is. So let's change directory into the desktop and be sure that you have the case exactly how it is printed here. And then let's do this one more time. And let's list out everything here to make sure that we are in the right directory. And there is our folder that we want to go to. So we will change directory into our terminal folder. Now, if we list out the items here, we actually only created a index.html file. So let's have some practice and create even more folders and files here. But first I'm going to clear out my terminal screen. So I'm going to do make dir folder 1 and folder 2. And this is just for testing. It really doesn't matter what you name it. And I am going to create a couple of files. The first one will be a style.css. That is a CSS file. Another one is going to be app.js. And a different one would be, what if we don't have an extension? What type of file would that be? So let's take a look. If we do touch and we'll do, let's say, test, you can see that by default inside of your Mac, anything that without a extension will be defaulted to a text edit file. So be sure to have a file extension so you know what type of file it is and make sure that it's the right one. Because by default it's a text edit, which you can't really do much with that. So now let's go into some new commands, some new advanced commands. The first one that I will show you is called echo. So echo actually writes things into where you want it to write. For example, if we do echo hello world, it will echo that message back to us in the terminal. This is where it displays it after we press return. But let's say that I want to write this hello world inside of one of these files. You can't really do it to a folder because it's a folder. You have to do it to a file. If that's the case, then you would echo the message that you want to do. And then you would do like a little caret or greater than sign and where you want this to be. If it's inside of a folder, you would designate the folder. If you want it inside of a file, then you would designate that file. What I mean by if you want it inside of a folder is that if your file is inside of the folder, you would put the name of the folder first and then the name of the file to get to it. So now let's actually put this in the index.html. So we'll do the index.html. So if you want to take a look at this HTML file, you can double click on it and that will open it up into your default browser. And you can see our message here of hello world. And it opened it all the way to the path of the file name here. Another way you can open it is with the keyword open and then the name of the file. So open index.html. And this will open it into your default browser because the HTML is actually a web page that only opens in the browser. So in my case, it opened it up inside of a Chrome. And in your case, it might be different. It might be whatever your default browser is. So, and here you can see how that looks like. So Echo will write a message inside of a file or inside of the terminal if you don't designate a file. Now, let's say that I have a file inside of my folder. If you want to make a file within a folder, there's a few ways you can do that. The first way is that, let's say inside of folder 1, I am going to make another text file there. Now, for the next part, let's say that I want to create a file within the folder, and there's a few ways you can do that. The easiest way of what you already learned is you would cd inside of the folder name and then create the file here. In this case, I'm making a text file. The other way you can do it is that if we go back one folder, we are going to make another file inside of folder 2. In this case, let's not cd into it, and I'll show you how this works. Is that if you want to create a file inside of that folder without cding into the folder, you would do touch, and then the name of the folder that the file's in, or where you want the file to be in, and then the file name and extension. So in this case, it will be folder 2, and this will be index.html. And you can't do a space here because this will do two things. It will create a folder 2, but it will be a text edit. And here it will create an index.html, but there's already an HTML file here with that same name. So you actually have to connect both of them together with a slash. So what the slash means is that you're going inside of that folder, and inside of that folder, you're putting an index.html file in there. So be sure you have a slash there, or else it'll think that you're creating two different types of files. And if you can see here, inside of folder 2, I have that index.html that we just created. The next technique that we will do is with the new command. And this new command is going to be the move command. And that is denoted with the MV, as in Victor. And with this, you can move files around with the same technique that we did up here. So let's say that I want to move my style.css and I want to move it inside of one more directory back. If that's the case, it will be .. That will put it inside of my desktop. But if you don't want it on your desktop, let's actually move it inside of folder 2. So let's do ls. You can see it's no longer here, but if we cd and do ls, you can see that we have a style file here. So let's move that one more folder inwards, and then we'll move it in the right folder. So it will be .. That would mean to go into a folder. And in this case, let's do terminal folder. And within terminal folder, I am going to do folder 2. Now, if you check in folder number 2, you can see that we move our style.css file there. So you can move files around with the name of the file you want to move and where you want to move it. Slash means that you are going into a folder. .. means you're going into a folder as well. And then // would mean you're going out of a folder. That's what we did here. So let's do a clear and see what else we can do with the move command. So let's go ahead and cd back into our terminal folder, and let's see what else we can use with the mv command. So with mv, we can also rename different types of files. So let's say that I want to rename my index.html file to home.html. And you can see here, I actually made the change. So this is another way you can rename your file. You can also right click and click rename as well, or you can do it inside of the terminal. So MV can actually do a lot for you. Something else that you can do, and this is something I actually don't recommend, because what I'm doing next is actually permanent. If you want to delete a particular folder or a file, I would recommend you right clicking and moving it to trash. I do not recommend this next part because it is permanent. And there is also other things that you would not use this command for, and I'll tell you what those things are. So again, if you want to delete a folder or file, make sure that if you do, check if the folder has anything that you want, and then just move it to trash. That way, if you change your mind, at least it will be in your trash. Because for this next command, this is actually permanent. So if you want to remove a file, let's say I want to get rid of this test file, it's with the rm command. And then the name of your file or the path to the file. And as soon as you press enter, it will delete this file. But before you do that, make sure that this is something you absolutely 110% want to do. Because there's no going back from this. There's no undo button inside of your terminal. When this deletes, it actually deletes it from your whole entire system. So if you are 110% sure, then go ahead and press enter. Now that will delete it. It won't put it into your trash. So that is a permanent way to remove things from your system. Again, I would recommend putting stuff into your trash. Let's try to do the same thing with folders. Let's go ahead and delete folder number 2. So rm folder 2. And it actually gives you a warning. It says folder number 2 is a directory. And the thing is that with your terminal, it's smart enough to know that when you are trying to delete a directory, it actually stops before you do that because there are items that could potentially be in that directory. So if you're 110% sure, again, I would recommend you throwing stuff in the trash. I would run this command. It is rm-rf and then the folder name. What rm-rf stands for is remove recursively. And this will remove all of the folders and everything that's inside of that folder all the way down in individual levels. And again, this change is permanent. So make sure that you want to do this 110%. Ooh, that was scary. So there are some things that you should never rm or r-mf. And that is, you should never do these commands inside of your system directories, which is what we find inside of the home directory. And you should also not remove files that your computer actually needs. So I would stay away from that, or else you would potentially ruin your whole computer. I have a former student that actually ran this rm-rf inside of their desktop, and they deleted their desktop. And there is no way you can get that back because that is a permanent solution. And the only way that you can get your desktop back is if you reinstall your OS, your operating system, or get a new laptop. So I would use this very cautiously if you are using it. Well, that concludes the end of this series, and I will see you all in the next video. See ya!